guys, welcome back to another video. So last video we talked about how we were supposed to get a lot of snow and it didn't last again, but the temperature sure did drop. So today our high is I think 25 degrees, and when I filmed that last video I think we were still in the 40s. So we got a lot colder, we got a little bit of snow, but it didn't last. But in today's video we need to reconfigure our hay feeder. So normally we have like an open tray on the bottom to feed grain in, and we kind of changed it a little bit this last few months, and it's not really working out to feed grain in, so we need to kind of change things around, and I'll kind of show you all of that because I know there's a lot of people interested in like the best type of feeders for goats and things like that. So I'll show you mine, show you what we do to it to get it updated, and then hopefully that'll help you guys make a good judgment on what you want to build for your goats and for your setup. And then we're going to talk about what we do to get our goats prepared for breeding. So we touched on it a little bit last video about nutritional flushing. So let's go talk a little bit more in depth about that today. All right, so what is nutritional flushing? So nutritional flushing is when you're preparing your goats for breeding season, you're upping their nutrition intake to help not only promote like better ovulation so that they have more multiples, but you're also promoting their body to conceive in that first cycle. Sometimes, depending on your goat, you can have tricky goats to get bred. And sometimes nutritional flushing will help. So the basics of nutritional flushing is going to be making sure they have good minerals and vitamins available. So we always have free choice minerals available at all times, and that is being replenished and topped off, and just making sure they're getting their adequate sources of minerals from there. And then also increasing their fats and increasing their proteins. The fats can actually really help their hormones too. So when you're going into breeding season, increasing those hormones, getting everything kind of ramped up and ready to go is going to help your does conceive quicker and to conceive more multiples. I would prefer twins and triplets every time. Those for me are easier to manage, but like you guys saw, we had quads last season. So it can happen. You just have to have a game plan and be prepared. But anyways, so what we do, my specific plan for nutritional flushing is high quality alfalfa hay. So that is what they get on the regular. And then we have their minerals and their vitamins in a pail. Free choice loose mineral for them to be able to take as much as they need. And then we also do a grain ration. So like a textured feed. Sometimes we do switch it up a little bit. We will start out with like this textured feed to start with, and then we'll go to a more formulated like goat feed occasionally. It really is going to depend on your goat's body condition, because really what we're doing is we're taking their body conditions from like low up into like the 2.5 to 3 for their body condition scale. You don't want obese goats, but you also want their body score to be like a 2.5 to a 3, because that's going to also help maintain that healthy hormone level, keep their ovulation high, and make it so that they will conceive in that first cycle of breeding versus having to wait for the next cycle of breeding. You'll start out slow because obviously if you haven't been feeding grain to them on the regular, you do want to start this slow. You don't want to cause imbalance in their rumen and cause them to have loose stools. So you still want to start off slow with your grain, and then we usually just go off of what their stool look like, what their manure looks like. If it's loose and soft, we know we're doing too much, so we'll decrease it a little bit. But then going off of that, we'll know when we can increase it a little bit at a time. But I usually get, every goat gets at least 1 scoop. For us is like 2 cups. So each goat will get about 2 cups, but it is free feed. So we put it in the tray and they all kind of go at it. So everyone will kind of get what they can consume in the time. And then once they have increased, then we might do 2 scoops per goat. So if you have never done nutritional flushing, I would encourage you to try it. So you will feed, for us, we do a month, and then into the early stages of gestation. And so in total, we're probably feeding grain for about 2 months. And then also watching body scores and keeping that in mind too, because you don't want obese goats. And then once they've gotten through that first stages of gestation, then you can slow down on this feed or stop it altogether, and then bring it back a month before kidding. So your kids at the end of your gestation period will be growing rapidly, and so you want to make sure they have the nutrition that they need for those kids to grow rapidly, but also for the mom to start producing milk for those kids without, like, and I can't stress this enough, without making your goats obese. And like for my moms that were carrying 4 babies, extra fat would have just made it so that they couldn't have room for those kids. So you do want to kind of walk that line of nutrition with pregnant animals. You want to give them the adequate amount that they desire and they need without overfeeding them and making them obese. The reason that we did start doing nutritional flushing with our goats when we very first started is because we didn't think it was worth it. So obviously, like, the hay is a cost, and then there's the feed that you're having to put in, like the extras like this is also another cost. And when we were first getting going, we didn't understand the importance, so we didn't do it. And we still had a decent kidding rate. We still had twins for both of our mamas the first year. Then when we really kicked it in and actually started doing the nutritional flushing was our 3rd year. That was the first year we had triplets. And then the 4th year was our first year with 2 different sets of quads. So it can definitely help your kidding percent, so the number of kids born to your goats, which actually will help in the overall number of like your farm. So try it out, do it for like maybe pick a set time, do it for that set time, and then see what your end results are. And then if that works, then keep that same set time. If that gave you too many kids, maybe reduce it by a week next time and just see how that works for your goats. Mine are very highly productive goats, so 30 days is about my maximum for them. So we're reconfiguring our feeder. This is actually a pretty decent setup for when you're just feeding hay, because the whole point of this is so that they can't pull too much out. They still pull plenty out because they're goats. But this bottom tray is where we feed grain when we start flushing the goats. Since we're getting ready for breeding season, we need to be flushing our goats, so it just encourages more multiples. Singles are okay, but singles can actually cause a problem with your goats because it's one huge kid usually, and that can be very hard for a goat, especially a first-year goat, to give birth to. So that's what we're hoping. We'll get like twins or triplets. Twins is my favorite. Triplets are okay, but we did have quads. So what we need to do is, this cattle panel has been okay. It was kind of just makeshift at the time because the goats, they can get their heads in here still, especially the ones that are a little bit, like, she just had her head stuck in the feeder last night, which is kind of funny because we were talking about changing this to a hog panel, so a smaller 4x4 square, so that they can't force their head through these like squares anymore. We actually have a spot right here. We had to cut a goat out of this spot right here already, and this was a lot earlier. But the cattle panel works, but the hog panel is going to be so much better because then they can just get their noses in here versus their whole head. So we're just going to switch things around, move that panel back a little bit so that we can use that tray for grain to get these guys prepared for breeding season. Poor Harley. She just got dusted.
Sorry, Harley.
See, the other problem with this, how we configured it this time, is since we don't have access to the tray, we can't actually clean the tray out. And after going with it for a few months, I've decided that I wanted it so that we could access the tray a little easier. So we could clean it out so that it doesn't get built up with all of that hay dust in there.
Move this party over.
And the whole reason that Trevor put those up was to keep, this is quite a big gap, and so Harley and some of the smaller goats could just jump right into the feeder. And so we'll see what we want to do with the corners.
So you want the panel to be about halfway, I think?
I think so. That way, like, there's some room, some headroom, so then it like keeps the hay a little tighter, and then there's some room for them to put their heads in without it hitting the panel, is what I was thinking. So instead of having the cattle panel come all the way forward like it has been, we're gonna have it come like halfway forward, I think.
Keep telling myself it'll be worth it, not to have the gaps afterwards.
It's gonna be worth it.
Jeez.
Goats can't put their heads through these squares. So then we won't have goats screaming because their head's in the feeder. Finally got it. You can see that edge really just like wanted to dig right in, but we just muscled it into spot. But now you can see where the panel is going to come and meet the wall and just go around this part. And it's going to go right to the bottom of here, and then we'll sandwich that in. So we did a board in the bottom to sandwich these together, because in the past we've just taken a nail and tried to just nail this in, and it always comes off. The goats are just way too aggressive. So this is like way better. So live and learn. Don't use the nails to hammer it into the board right here. Just sandwich it with another board. It's gonna give you way more longevity. And then we gotta do the top. Woohoo! Now that looks very nice.
Should we keep this as a guard?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. We were gonna cut this off or wrap it around, but it could be a guard so that they can't come up and over and try to put their head in the feeder. Oh my gosh, this is looking so good. This is like my vision. So you have your flakes, because we don't feed the whole bales or anything, we just feed flakes. So before, when the hay was all the way to here, there's just too much space and too much wiggle, and so that's why the goats felt like they needed to stick their head through the panels before to get to the hay. But this is going to keep the hay a lot tighter so that they can reach it with just their noses through these little squares, and then all of the extra, hopefully they won't kick out too much, and then we have the bottom tray to feed their grain in. Awesome! High five!
We did it.
All right, let's give them some grain and see how it goes. See how much better that works? They can actually reach the grain now. Whereas before, they were having to shove their head through the panel to get to the grain.
It's going to be pretty awesome for the hay too, I think.
Oh yeah. Just the flakes.
Might just have to give them seconds so we can see.
Look, see, it would fit perfectly. But we're going to divide it up because we need to have them share. They get seconds today. See, that's perfect. So the name of the game with any feeder setup is to try to minimize waste. So most livestock, you try to corral or contain the hay so that they don't sift through it and walk through it and use the bathroom in it and things like that. Goats, from my experience, they're notorious hay wasters because unlike larger livestock, they have very delicate mouths, and they can pick through and decide what they want to eat out of the hay. And so they'll just kind of sift through and push aside the rest. So if they can stick their head into a whole big mass of hay, they'll just push it around, knocking it all out, causing a lot of hay to be wasted. And so the reason why we've been wanting to go to a smaller size square for a while is to minimize the amount of hay that they can actually pull from the feeder at a time, so that will encourage them to eat those mouthfuls that they're pulling from the feeder instead of sticking their head in and pushing it all around, just hunting around for the bits that they want to eat. So feeders like this, feeders like a lot of the other ones that you see online, that's just basically the main focus, is trying to keep the goats from pulling out large quantities of hay at a time. So you can see that they can go through and pull out mouthfuls, and that's what you want. So like smaller squares are going to help with that. Alright, so hopefully this video was helpful, help you get some ideas on how you want to configure your feeder system for your goats, what's going to work for you. I know there are several people that have a separate area they feed grain and a separate area they feed hay. For us, it all just works kind of just doing it all together in the same feeder. And then also, if you guys were wondering anything about the nutritional flushing, and I kind of went over all the details with you on that, so if you have any questions, you can always ask me in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, and good luck and happy breeding season.
Stuck.
Oh no! Now you're in the feeder forever. You're like one of the goats. I gotta cut you out.
Ah!
Yeah.